Welcome to Newsmakers. In this edition, we bring focus to suicide prevention efforts and the call to action. Recently, the organization Active Minds brought an interactive presentation called Send Silence Packing to the Missouri Southern State University campus, where students felt the impact of the reality of suicide.
Well, I walked in and I was kind of like, this is so overwhelming to think that this many people go through so much stuff alone.
Each of these backpacks represents a life lost to suicide. They lined the walls and the windowsills and stretched across the floor of the Billingsley Student Center. Hundreds of backpacks. Behind each one is a story. Stories that hit home for Micah and her best friend Emily.
I think it's very important, and I really think people need to hear it. We were sitting down there, and the first thing I told her was, "I'm happy you're here, I love you." And she told me that she's happy I'm here because we're both survivors, and so it's really just, it's important to let each other know, even if there wasn't this whole display, we would still let each other know every day, "Hey, I love you, I'm happy you're here."
The Send Silence Packing Behind the Backpacks display was brought to Missouri Southern State University by Active Minds.
So Active Minds is the nation's leading mental health nonprofit for young adults and sort of empowering them to advocate for themselves in the mental health sphere. It started in 2003 when Allison Malman, our founder, lost her brother Brian to suicide. And it started as a club on campus at UPenn, and sort of grew into a nonprofit that extended beyond Allison's graduation. And Send Silence Packing is a program started in 2008, I believe, with the first display on the National Mall in DC.
Aaron Plattis is the Send Silence Packing tour coordinator. He says most of the backpacks have stories on them. They were donated by family, friends, and loved ones of people who have died by suicide. Now, not just one, but 2 trucks take the tour across the country.
I think this go round we've got 39 stops around the country between the 2 trucks. So we're from Massachusetts to Texas this fall and sort of everywhere in between.
Many of the faces on the backpacks are young people, and they're targeting college campuses where many face new pressures.
Absolutely. The transition into college life can be really hard for people because they're leaving home for the first time. They're transitioning into a more rigorous academic environment. They're losing touch with people that they've known their whole lives, starting sort of integrating into a new social system. And that can be really pressuring to people as at the same time as you're leaving the nest. You don't have that parental support as much as you did. So it can be a really jarring change for people, and it can leave people feeling isolated, which is not good for someone's mental health.
I mean, you have to create almost a new friend group, right?
Exactly. You have to sort of create an entire new social circle, which can be really demanding for someone who isn't necessarily very extroverted.
Active Minds' original goal of raising awareness of suicide has shifted to educating about prevention and working to inspire action.
Sort of empowering people to reach out to their friends when they feel that they need to, because something between 65 and 70% of college-age students, when they're struggling with something like mental health or suicidal ideation, they're going to reach out to a friend first. So we want their friends to be ready to hear them and listen to them and appreciate them. And we want people to be confident, to be strong enough to be vulnerable with those people, because it's so important to have that first interaction be impactful, and for that person who's reaching out saying, "I'm struggling with suicidal ideation," to be validated.
Like Micah was there for Emily.
It just felt like life was going downhill, and so there were times when I would think about it, and then one day I tried, and then after that I was like, that was the scariest moment of my life. I don't want to do that again. Mm-hmm. And then now I have her to save me from anything like that.
Do you feel like that's kind of a responsibility, or
No, I feel like because she does the same thing for me, so it's kind of like we're very much in it together, and it's so important for somebody to have another person to be able to talk to. So it's kind of like reliability, you're not just here because you're here, you're supposed to be here to live your life and make friends and meet people.
So how does Send Silence Packing teach students to take action?
Active Minds has a conversational tool called VAR, which is Validate, Appreciate, Refer. So functionally, if someone was to come up to you and tell you, "I'm struggling with suicidal ideation, I'm having a really rough time mentally," so you can just say, functionally, at a very boiled down, simple level, your feelings are valid and I appreciate you sharing them with me. And then if you feel that it's necessary, you can refer them to a more professional counseling service, because not everyone is a crisis counselor. And that question can come in a lot of different ways, and those sort of validating and appreciating statements can also look like a lot of different things. Like, thank you for sharing that with me. You're really brave for doing that. And then, can I sit and wait with you for someone to come and talk to you? Can I walk you to the counseling center? Can I sit with you and help you get a therapy appointment? Something along those lines. And then we also want people to be very aware of resources that they have in the event of a crisis, that they need to sort of outsource something that they're not fully prepared for. And there's a new crisis call and text line, 988, which is much more concise than the old one. And you can call and text that if you're struggling, or if someone you know is struggling, so you can reach out through call or text if you are currently struggling or you want to be there for someone who is struggling more effectively.
Behind the backpacks includes a display with iPads to hear stories in depth, as well as hearing from survivors of suicide attempts. Whether listening or just looking, Aaron said students can be impacted in a number of ways.
You can absolutely be touched by one. You can be touched by just seeing that the display is happening. It took me a while to read all of the backpacks. And every once in a while, just walking around the display, I'll just still see a backpack, and it's just like, I need to take a minute. It's very powerful and very emotional, and I think I generally encourage people to take in what they're comfortable taking in, and to engage to their comfort level, because it would be extremely overwhelming, I think, to read all of the backpacks all at once.
The goal is to make it easier to talk about suicide.
It's a little bit eye-opening, you know?
Because that's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to change the conversation, change the culture around talking about mental health and suicide. Because if it's easier to talk about, then things are easier to notice when they're happening. It's easier to have those conversations. It's easier to ask those questions. Are you thinking about suicide? And that's what we're trying to inspire in people.
Emily and Micah were inspired.
Because it's so overwhelming to think that so many people are going through that, and you're not alone. You're not. And I know that it feels like you are, because you feel really empty, but you're not. Just, you could turn to anybody and probably have a conversation about it.
Do you guys feel empowered to talk to other people?
Kind of.
I do. Yeah. The one thing I've learned growing up is accepting what has happened to me in the past, and knowing, even if it wasn't good, but knowing that it's making me a better person, and accepting it and not making my life just about that, accepting it and being able to open up to other people about it. I feel like it would really help them, because they could have gone through it too. They could be feeling something that they don't think anybody else is feeling, and I just feel like being that person, opening up, they're like, oh, she went through that too, I'm not the only one, you know?
They're hoping this makes you guys take action to help others.
Yeah.
Do you feel empowered?
Yeah. It's a really touchy subject for me, because my little sister struggled with that, and it's been a ride since. But it's just really important to know that it does get better, and you can get help, and you're not alone. So.
Aaron said sometimes all it takes is someone to listen.
A lot of people just sort of come up and share their story, which is good. I mean, that's the conversation we're trying to start. If you're talking about, like your friend that you lost to suicide, that's erasing the stigma around it. Even saying suicide without lowering your voice or just talking about it in hushed tones, that's a big step in sort of eliminating some of the stigma around it.
Active Minds is active on hundreds of college campuses.
I feel like the culture is starting to change, where I think college campuses are a good place where people are more open and willing to talk about things. And suicide is no different. I think once the conversation's been opened up, a surprising number of people have a story of how closely they've been impacted by suicide, and having the ability to open up and talk about that is healthy.
Sometimes we'll just FaceTime each other and just talk about our day. We hang out pretty
Constantly.
often. But when we're not together, when something happens, we immediately call the other person.
Yeah.
And
So that you're not alone.
yeah, whether it's sad or happy, just something.
Or
to
annoyed.
be-
You're just like, I'm so mad. Can I please rant?
yeah.
We have a sign somewhere that says you don't need to be an expert, sometimes you just need to be there. I think that's really poignant. I think sometimes people just need an outlet. And obviously everyone's mental health is different and some people need more help than others, but sometimes just being there to listen and support someone who is going through something and just saying your feelings are valid, like it is okay to feel like this. Thank you for sharing that with me.
It's nice to have somebody to listen. It's nice to be the one listening to.
Yeah.
When we come back, we will talk with campus counselors about the program, the mental health needs of students at MSSU, and the help that is available. But first, we hear from another student who visited the Send Silence packing display.
So have you ever personally had an experience with somebody who was going through those kind of thoughts or that actually followed through and committed suicide?
Some years ago, I have a kind of depression. I stopped doing many things that I liked. I even talked about committing suicide or getting to a coma because I was really unhappy. I cried a lot constantly. I stopped doing things that I liked. I think I put some distance with people.
So what was your guys' first reaction to this whenever you saw it or when you heard that it was coming?
Yeah, good question. It's very heavy. I mean, there are a lot of backpacks like all around this building, and I think that it's just been like a very impactful exhibit.
I absolutely agree because I mean like this is probably not even like half of the population that has committed suicide. This is just including the ones that know about Send Silence packing, you know.
Is there anything that you would like to say to anybody that's having those kind of thoughts or that you just know to somebody who's struggling?
Whoever you are, I am pretty sure you have at least one person who cares about you. Go, talk with them. They will hear you. Talk. I mean, it will not solve everything at once, but it will help. I remember a phrase that I heard some time ago, that when it's about mental illness, talking is basically medicine.
What would you say to somebody that you knew was struggling, or if you had a friend, how would you recommend them or talk to them about it?
I would say that things will get better and that it just takes time and that you're not weak for reaching out and asking for help.
I would say that help is such a thing that like you should want to always be able to ask for help, but some people just think that it's embarrassing, and it is not embarrassing. You should never feel shamed for having to ask for help because that's what other people are there for, to help you out.
Thank you guys so much for talking to us today, and we really appreciate the work that you guys are doing to, make students comfortable with even like looking at this and getting them involved in it. Thank you guys.
A team of MSSU counselors was on hand for the Send Silence packing display to help students process what they saw and their reactions. Joining us for this conversation and the services available on campus is Allison Vandergriff with MSSU Counseling Services. Welcome.
Thank you.
This was a very interesting display, very emotional, impactful. We heard some of the reactions to the display. Why was it important to bring this display to campus?
I think, when you bring something especially so interactive to the campus, people are wanting to get more open talks about suicide and suicidal thoughts. But when you're having something with interaction, it's giving students and anyone else walking through the availability to actually maybe make a personal connection. And I think that was helpful, and so that was our job to also be on standby.
How common is suicide among college students?
I would say it is one of the highest, like 86% of MSSU students have reported having suicidal thoughts in the past year.
Wow. That's amazingly big number.
Yes,
big
it
percentage.
is. It is.
So let's talk about that. What percentage of students come in having maybe other mental issues or other concerns, and then how do you respond to that?
Right. So I would say, a lot of people would wonder, what would someone come to a college campus and talk about for counseling? But I would say that most of the time we're not talking about, homesickness or maybe a concern about a grade. Those are so secondary to what most of our students are experiencing, which most of the time is trauma, depression, finances, life situations that they're going through.
A number of pressures. When we heard some of the struggles, those are some of the primary issues. What reactions did you get from students who saw this display?
A lot of the students that we saw that were walking through, I heard a lot of comments that just were, wow, this is, really impactful. I think a lot of students would say that they know someone that has died by suicide.
Can this be a trigger for some of these students emotionally? And, is that a good thing to prompt that discussion?
A lot of times I think when we say trigger, people would argue, okay, that seems negative.
Yes, it does.
It does seem negative, but I would argue that the more we can talk about it and normalize it, that gives students and faculty a chance to maybe not have the stigma associated with it and make it more of a topic that we can have discussions about and then let people know where they can get help.
So one of the things talked about, students say it's, they feel isolated or can feel isolated, and the pandemic did that for a lot of people. Do you feel like the pandemic has made it worse for students, and have you seen maybe an increase in those coming to you?
I think a lot of the students that I've worked with, that whether they were transitioning from high school to college or they'd been, already in their college experience, it was a quite different, situation for them because a lot of their classes were forced to be online. They didn't get the college experience living maybe on campus. And so many of these stressors, family, finances, all of that was maybe magnified because they were maybe back home with family members.
And it's not the experience parents had when it comes to college. It's hard for them to relate.
Right. Yeah. I would agree and say a lot of people don't know unless they were walking through that at the same time. It's hard for them to understand and relate.
So let's talk about some tips we could give students, young adults, if they're feeling overwhelmed or depressed. What kinds of things can they do?
Well, first of all, we have counseling on campus. It is free for our students, and I think a lot of people don't know that. Where we're located at Hearns Hall, 3rd floor, but it's confidential. You don't have to have a crisis to come to us. I think a lot of times students will say, well, I haven't had something traumatic. Okay, great. I'm so glad.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that you can't benefit from tools, like you said, to, get you through a tough week. We don't have to do a long-term counseling, like a weekly thing. It could be just a one-time thing, and that can be just as beneficial.
You all handed out a sheet of 5 to Thrive. Can you give us that in a nutshell? We're going to show some of that as we go to break later. But can you tell us in a nutshell what 5 to Thrive is about?
So we're looking at different tips that students can pick up on, and just how to manage their time better, what their stressors are, different ways they can pick up different coping skills.
So is there a self-care kind of formula for folks to know that, hey, I'm at a stress point, how can I take care of myself? What are some advice?
I would say if you're noticing that it's something where maybe in the past you've handled it and now it's getting to a point where it's interfering with your everyday life, even on a small scale, that might be the time to reach out.
And just talk.
And just talk. Yeah. We're here.
So what are the best ways for students to contact your offices for help?
We have availability where you can walk in, and we have a team of 2 of the counselors, myself included, and we have 3 interns right now from different universities. And but I know a lot of students would prefer to just email us, so counselingservices@mssu.edu.
So They can just have a conversation through email.
They can, yes.
And is that easier for some students?
Yes, I think a lot of times if they would prefer to just get something set up that way, and we even have the availability to do telehealth, which that way if you want to just do it on a screen, that's fine too.
All right. Allison, thank you for joining us. We hope
you,
students
Lisa.
reach out for help.
Yep, great.
Well, coming up when we come back, a look at supports in our community for those with mental and behavioral health issues as we welcome guests from the local chapter of NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. But first, we hear from some of those who volunteered at Send Silence Packing. Welcome back to Newsmakers. MSSU counseling services are available for students needing help for their mental health, but there are also resources in our community. The National Alliance for Mental Illness, NAMI, is an organization working in Joplin to offer support. Joining our conversation now are Becky Ward, a chairperson with NAMI in Joplin, and Keith Dunn, a veteran suicide survivor, member of the local NAMI group. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I did want to talk to you about what you offer at NAMI. Suicide isn't good within any age group, certainly, but we've been talking about younger people. Becky, what are some of the issues that NAMI members who might be younger come to you to talk about, and the triggers that they might see that you have coming to you in your groups?
I would say isolation is one of the biggest. Whether or not they're actually experiencing isolation, they feel like they are. Also, a lot of problems can come with stress, especially with younger people in school and the financial things that come with that. A lot of social media can cause a lot of stress because of needing to appear perfect in social media, and that really causes a lot of strain on people.
So, Keith, you are a suicide survivor, a veteran. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, ma'am.
Do you mind sharing your story with us
No, ma'am.
as a survivor?
No, ma'am. It's my honor. I guess what I want to say is the main reason that you do commit suicide or try is because of the way that you feel about how people think of you or how you think of yourself. That you're not worthy, you're not worthwhile, you're not a good person. And the truth of it all is you've got to like yourself. And I believe that if we don't love each other as people, period, then we're failing everything. We're failing each other as humans. And as young children, I can see how easy it is to get into the point of thinking that I'm not good enough to be friends with so-and-so, or my family aren't happy with me. But the truth of it is we don't know how to ask for somebody to love us. And sometimes we don't hear it enough. And it's my job to go out and tell people how much we do love each other.
So how and where did you find help?
I found help with being a Christian, that I know how much God loves me now, that I'm worth everything.
But you said you discovered that after your suicide attempt, right?
Yes. But I found that people really do care about you. The people that I thought wouldn't even miss me were there. Bikers came to see me. My family was there most of the time. The people that came in contact with me even after the suicide attempt showed me that they cared and that they would have missed me if I would have made it and not, if I would have succeeded at my attempt.
So you had mentioned previously feeling isolated and you feel like God was there for you. Do we Becky, is it important to note that maybe a God or a higher power, what role does that play in helping folks?
I believe that that is one of the most integral parts of getting help. Now, at NAMI, we don't stress any religion. In fact, we have a program which I recently went through, and I'm going to be going to different churches throughout the area. And we are encouraged to use whatever vernacular, things that they use, whether it's a pastor or an imam or whatever their words are, to help them to understand what we can do for them.
Is it important to know that there's always someone who cares?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell us about your support groups and how their focus and how folks can take part.
So we do wellness on Mondays from 4 to 8. No, 4 to 6. 4 to 6. I'm sorry, 4 to 6. And we, for that, we do clay, we'll do painting, we're making Christmas trees out of material, wood, and material to put in.
How is it important for you to be part of that as someone who survived? I mean, do you feel like you still need to go, or do you feel like you also have a role to help others? Or
I think both.
Because
you never know what somebody's going to say that's going to help you. That what they went through, how they went through it, can help each and every one of us, even if we don't even know we need that help. And I feel like it's my duty to let people know how I feel today. Then I feel better about myself. I feel better about the world around me. I don't see the darkness like I used to. I see the light of humanity in the world, and yes, there's a lot of bad things that's going on around, but we can overcome that with each other's help.
Excellent. Well, it's so glad that you're here for others and all the things that you do. Do you feel the 988 help, the 988 suicide hotline will be a big help?
I do.
As well?
I was very encouraged when that first started being talked about, and when it finally came out, I was very excited because anybody can access that. They don't have to remember a long number, an 888 number or something. It is there for them very quickly.
Excellent. Well, thank you for what you do for the community, and thank you for sharing your story today.
Can I share one more thing?
Yes.
We also have a group meeting that we meet on Tuesdays from 6:30 to 8. And so everybody's welcome in the community, whether you've been diagnosed with a mental illness or not.
Sometimes you just need a group to talk to.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, ma'am.
Appreciate it. If you or someone you know is in crisis and needs help and treatment, treatment does work. Call the new National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988 or program your phone to the number 1-800-273-TALK. That's 273-8255. You can also text BRAVE to 741-741. Anyone can help save a life. Thanks for joining us.